Hello.
Hey, Scott, it's Dennis from the Australian Rock Show. How are you?
Hey, Dennis. How are you, buddy?
Look, I'm very well. Such an honour to have you on the show, and importantly for me anyway, it's not just your incredible rock and roll history which brings you here. It is, in fact, the vital and fresh-sounding music which you're still releasing. Case in point, album number 4 from Black Star Riders titled Another State of Grace, which is due out early September. Scott, is this the finest record the band have cut so far?
I think so. I think this is our fourth Black Star Riders album. To be quite honest, after the first, you're always thinking, are we going to be able to do a second one? And here we are in our fourth. And really, with each album that we've done, you can hear the progression that the band has gone through. I know in the beginning, a lot of people thought we, sounded like Thin Lizzy, but not so much anymore. This is a band that's standing on its own 2 feet now, and it's Black Star Rider music now.
Well, if the first couple of releases from the album are anything to go by, I reckon personally we could have a contender for Album of the Year. And in fact, we kicked off this show with the just released Ain't the End of the World. By gosh, 10 seconds in and I was hooked. Congratulations, extremely infectious. And I've been cranking it constantly since I heard it. What can you tell us about Ain't the End of the World?
Well, there's several tracks on this album that kind of deal with kind of world-related subjects. And that's Ricky is the lyricist of the band. He grew up in kind of war-torn Northern Ireland. So, I hear a title, this ain't the end of the world, and I'm thinking, okay, well, this is a song about some sort of war-torn area. And in fact, what it's about a guy breaking up with his girl, and he says, we're breaking up, but to be quite honest, it's not the end of the world, that you and I are no more. So I actually got that one wrong. So that's basically what that song is about.
Just going on from that, music always has a way of getting a powerful message across. No greater example than the track Why Do You Love Your Guns, written, I believe, by Ricky in the aftermath of the Sandy Hook elementary school shooting. Powerful really is the only word to describe that one, isn't it?
Well, and I think it's a great. See, Ricky lives in Los Angeles now, and they're hearing about these sort of tragedies all the time in America, and nothing seems to be getting done about the whole gun problem that's in the United States, and that's been there for quite a long time, from president to president to president. They keep trying to do things, you make the NRA less powerful year by year, and it doesn't seem to happen. I think Ricky, he's just, as we all are, he's just fed up with that whole subject, and hence, why do you love your guns so much? What is the deal here? Why do you need so many guns in America? So it's kind of, his protest really against the gun violence in the United States.
Scott, as many fans will know, late last year, Damon Johnson exited the band with his shoes being filled by Christian from Stone Sour. Christian has a bit of a punk background, having played with D.D. Ramone and also one of his early outfits called Strychnine Babies. And I know that was some time back, but I guess having someone come into the band with punk rock roots introduces a different element other than a straight-up hard rock guy. Would you agree?
Oh, no, I would absolutely agree. But, if you listen to any of the Stone Sour material, it is more of a, hard rock kind of a background with that band. But, I quite like Christian's take on the whole thing. Damon and I were, sort of guitar style-wise, we're kind of the same, if you know what I mean, right? And then enters Christian, who's his style is quite a bit different from mine, and I actually really love that take on the whole thing, because for me, it just kind of, it widens the sound out, And the problem with the connotations of, punk rock, it's a lot of people think that, those guys, they can't play or whatever. I'm telling you, Christian is a player, like you would not believe. I was so impressed in the studio with his playing. He would come up with things, different sounds and all that. I was just blown away with it. I had a really great time. recording this album with Christian Martucci.
You've got quite a young producer in Jay Rustin, who worked on Another State of Grace. My question is, with so much experience behind you, what are you looking for nowadays when seeking out a producer? Because I'm assuming that's a role you could perform yourself.
Well, you say that, but kind of the last thing I want to do is to have like more pressure piled on while you're recording, any album. The thing that Jay brought to this particular album was a hell of a lot of fun. It wasn't just piling on business after business after business. He was in there. He has a great sense of humor. He's a hell of a musician himself. So when you found yourself in a certain song and you were like, you didn't know which way to go, or maybe you were a little stuck or whatever, he was right there, right at your shoulder saying, well, how about this, right? And more times than not, he was coming up with the right ideas or the right direction. But even more so than that, he kept the atmosphere really light in the studio, and he made it just a hell of a lot of fun to record this album. And I think it's why one of the reasons that this album came out the way it did. I think you could tell that all of us in the band had a great attitude in recording this album.
You've worked with so many producers over the years. John Alcock, who did Jailbreak, and Johnny the Fox, Ron Neverson, all the way back on Nightlife, Tony Visconti, who of course did Bad Reputation and Black Rose. Who, if any, left a positive impression on you, and in what way?
Well, all of them did, because, you work with these guys, and they have great names going for them, and you're always out there to learn something from each guy. And that's what you want to take away from each album, that you learn, maybe not everything, but you're going to learn something, from these guys, how to set up your gear, what kind of tone you want to go through on certain songs. These guys have been through these situations many, many times. So you kind of defer to them sometimes, like, hey, I need this kind of guitar, so what can you get that for me? And more times than not, they can get it for you because they know how to do it. But, you're kind of looking for a producer, you're really kind of looking for leadership. The guy's got to be the general in there to keep the whole thing glued together, because it can very easily kind of go south on you, or things can get out of control, or the juices aren't flowing. I mean, it's a guy, he's like a team leader in there to help you through not only the good times, but, the bad times when you get stuck, or musical mental blocks or whatever. He's there to kind of smash the block. So I think the producer is actually, he's got a very important job in the studio.
Scott, as an Australian music historian, I do just wish to rack your brain a little bit about Thin Lizzy's tours of Australia back in 1978 and again in 1980. The first tour, which commenced with a free concert at Brisbane's Botanical Gardens. Gary Moore on guitar replacing Robbo, and on drums was Mark Norsif, who was filling in for Brian Downey, culminating with that massive October 29th outdoor concert on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. You must have fond memories of that tour.
Those are highlights for me. We came to Australia not really knowing what was going to happen. We knew we had a bit of a following, but we didn't quite know. I mean, there was no internet back there, so it was hard to keep tabs on what your popularity was like. So we landed, and we saw the crowds that we were playing to. I mean, Australia is a rock nation, and it was incredible to see just the Australian population just completely rock out every night, and they gave us such a great welcome. Yeah, that the Sydney Opera House one, that was really only supposed to be 5,000 or 6,000 people there. And at the end of the day, it was estimated to be 40 to 60,000 people at the Sydney Opera House, on the steps of the Sydney Opera House. And I remember afterwards, the city fathers of Sydney were horrified because they saw the aftermath. with the trash and everything. And, when you think about it, the Sydney Opera House really is Australia's Taj Mahal. When you see that building, you know what part of the world you're looking at, right? So they were horrified when they saw the absolute mess afterwards. And from what I understand, they kind of made sure that was never going to happen again. They reduced the crowds, and
I thought the crowds were.
What's that?
I thought the crowd was bigger than that. Over 100,000.
Well, so you stand on the stage and you can't really gauge when there's that many people. You can't gauge, how really large the audience is. All I know is I could not see the end of the humanity from side to side.
Well,
it was really special. So yeah, I mean that's how can that not be a highlight in your career?
I know it must have been, because I know that you used that as the cover art for your 2012 book. And I guess that was one of the biggest crowds up to that point.
Yeah, I think, as a matter of fact, I mean, you being the historian here, I was told that it was in the Australian Guinness Book of Records for a while, and I'm sure that there's been many more bands that have, beaten that crowd record, but I don't know if that's actually true or not. It's kind of a cool thought if it actually is true. Do you know if that's true?
It was at that stage. I don't know if it's been beaten, and it wouldn't have been beaten by a cooler rock and roll band than Thin Lizzy. But that's my own opinion.
So much. I appreciate
now,
that.
I guess Thin Lizzy became synonymous for their use of twin guitar harmonies. At what point did the band consciously decide to incorporate that into the band's sound, or was there another band using twin guitar harmonies, say the Allman Brothers, that influenced you to incorporate it?
No, I can hand on heart that wasn't really. There was no other band that actually. I mean, obviously there were other bands out there doing it, not a lot of it, right? I think the main difference between ourselves and the other bands, you had the Eagles, they threw a little bit in there, and the Allman Brothers, but that was more of a country-based system, that the arena that they were in, which is all basically major chords. And then, Thin Lizzy comes along, and we're using the minor chord arena. And no, that really hadn't been heard before. And I hadn't really, thought about that, major, minor chords, blah, blah, blah. It wasn't in my thought process. It's just like, that's how we wrote these songs, with a lot of minor chords in it, and we kind of laced the harmony guitars around those chord sections. But no, it's if I'm going to be totally honest, the harmony guitar thing was really more of an accident than anything else. We were in the studio, and I think Brian Robertson had gone out just to record a single line, and the engineer had kind of a multi-second tape delay on his guitar. So when we heard it back, it fed back on itself in harmony. And of course, he was going, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." Phil went, "Wait a minute, that sounds really great." And so I quickly learned the harmony to it, went out and did the harmony line. We came back and listened to it and thought, that sounds really cool. I've got another guitar line. Why don't we try that same thing on that line also? So it just kind of went from there. It wasn't like a premeditated kind of thought process that we were going through. It's just something that we heard, we really liked. It was a really cool way to present the guitars and all that. Here was another thing the guitars could do. So, and then it just kind of kept going and going and going until I actually read one day in the papers. It actually said, "Yeah, Thin Lizzy and that patented harmony guitar sound that they've got." I thought, "Wow, we've got a sound, cool." So then we just kept going with it. We just love doing it.
Mate, the song we're going to close this show out with is Killer Without a Cause, lifted off Bad Reputation. Tough lyrics like "The time is right to settle scores," penned by yourself and Phil. By gosh, the lead guitar work in that song always leaves me speechless. And I guess there's some lovely harmonica in there too from Phil. Interesting time period in Thin Lizzy's history. How do you look back on Killer Without a Cause?
Well, we put that back in the set. We're taking Thin Lizzy out for 4 shows over here, and that's one of the songs that's in the set. That song actually got banned in England because of the lyrics. There was an unfortunate thing that happened. We were playing a concert up north in England, and allegedly, while we were playing, a girl got attacked outside the venue. The papers picked it up. It kind of went viral at that point, to the point where the radio station says, we've got to stop playing this song. So, and then we had to drop it from the set. It became a whole political thing. But, and saying all the negative things there, it's a great song to play live. So nowadays that we can put it back in the set, and I'm loving playing that song again.
There's not enough time, obviously, to dig into your history, but there's just a couple of points I want to bring up. One in particular, I want to focus a question, if I may, from around that time period where I've read that when Gary returned to the band, you took Gary's arrival as an impetus to improve your own playing, something you did with all your guitar partners in Thin Lizzy. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. When we decided that we wanted Gary in as a permanent guy, Phil said, "Are you good with that? Because he's going to be, your guitar partner. I got to make sure that you're okay with it." And I said, "Oh, hell yeah!" Knowing how good this guy was, I just felt, here's a chance. And all musicians should kind of have the attitude. You want to be playing with people who are better than you, so you can actually further your education on whatever instrument you pick. So for me, it was a chance to play with this great, guitar player, and and learn some things along the way, a little few tricks that he had that I hadn't thought about or couldn't, play at the time, and now I was being able to, play these certain kind of lines I didn't think I was going to be able to play. So yeah, it was playing with Gary was it was a great period for me. It's just too bad that it lasted such a short amount of time.
Well, I guess you said a similar kind of thing. I watched an interview with Neil Turbin a while back, and he was talking about how you could have led, your path could have led to you joining Supertramp. But you said pretty much the same thing. I know for sure I would not have gotten the training as a guitar player out of Supertramp that I did get playing with all those guys in Thin Lizzy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know, a lot of people probably don't know this, but when I joined Thin Lizzy, I'd really only been playing guitar for like 3 years.
Incredible.
Incredible,
I played, isn't it?
Yeah, I kind of knew what I was doing because, I'd been playing bass for about 3 or 4 years before that. And when I switched over, it's when I went to England. I don't know how I got the cojones to think I was going to be able to go to England with that little experience, But yeah, so my training ground was Thin Lizzy, and if I would have joined Supertramp, and this is going to be a horrible thing to say, but that's really kind of a guitar player's graveyard. They don't really want a lot of guitar in any of their music. So to be able to to be in a band like Thin Lizzy, where it's all about the guitars, it's great training ground, and you gotta be quick on your feet. You got to be learning this stuff very, very quickly, or you're not going to make the grade. So it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of hard work at the same time, and I'm really glad I went through it.
Let's try and finish up and keep on schedule. I noticed that. Is there a plan to release an album every 2 years with Black Star Riders, or it's just worked out that way?
It seems like it, doesn't it?
Does.
Okay, it's 2 years down the road. It's time for another album. It's so far, it's just kind of worked out that way. We're constantly writing. I think Ricky lyrically has probably already got the next 3 albums in his back pocket. So it's almost like you don't have to put it out every 2 years, but it's like we want to put it out. We want to get out as much material as we possibly can. So it just kind of works out that way every 2 years. We'll see with this album here. Maybe it'll be 3 years, maybe it'll be a year and a half. I don't know, right? But it's interesting you bring that up. Yeah, it is. It is every 2 years. That's the way it's been working out.
Mate, we better wind up. Every guest on our show gets to choose a song by an Australian band. What would you like to choose and why?
Well, probably give me a little AC/DC, some Hell's Bells there, right? I've always liked AC/DC. They actually
they did a whole bunch of, they did with the Dictators as well, didn't they?
Yeah, and to see, a band that supported you, turn out to be this absolutely mega band throughout the world is astonishing, right? But, they consistently came up with great songs. Angus is a killer guitar player. Well, everybody in the band is a killer player. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of AC/DC. Always have been.
Wonderful, wonderful choice. Thank you for your time today. The album from Black Star Riders is called Another State of Grace. It's out September 6th. You can get it on vinyl too, which is great. And I note that there's a smart-looking box set available, which even includes a hip flask, which is very cool. Head to blackstarriders.com for all the details. A pleasure chatting with you, mate. Good luck with the new album and for the remainder of the year.
Thank you, Dennis, and I hope to see you over there at some point.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time tonight. An absolute honour.
Great. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Thanks for the interview. It was a good one.